What if there's a whole civilization hiding under our feet? For centuries, Russian old believers built underground cities where they kept ancient knowledge and technology. Today, archaeologists are finding traces of these settlements all over Russia, and eyewitnesses keep seeing mysterious underground people. Could it be that a parallel world still exists, and its inhabitants are watching us from the depths of the Earth? Welcome to the investigation of one of Russia's most incredible mysteries. If this story has made you look at the world beneath our feet in a new way, like and subscribe to the channel. What do you think? Could the underground cities of the old believers exist in our time? Share your theories in the comments. Perhaps there are those among us who know more than they are willing to say. 17th century Russia. Patriarch Nikon carries out church reforms that split the Orthodox world in two. Millions of believers refuse to accept the innovations, considering them the work of the Antichrist. The greatest religious drama in Russian history begins, a schism whose consequences are still felt today. But what if the official history is silent about the most important thing? What if behind the mass self-immolations and open resistance lay a carefully planned operation to create an alternative civilization? A civilization that was to go underground and wait out the hard times there, preserving the true faith for future generations. Protopope Avakum, the spiritual leader of the resistance, repeatedly mentioned in his writings certain secret shelters where the faithful could hide from the servants of the Antichrist. Modern researchers have long considered these references to be metaphorical, but archaeological finds in recent decades have forced a re-evaluation of this point of view. The archives of the Solovetsky Monastery contain mysterious documents dating back to 1674. They contain detailed plans of underground cells and diagrams of secret passages. For a long time, these documents were considered to be plans of ordinary monastery basements, but modern deciphering has revealed something completely different. The diagrams show a complex system of multi-level underground structures capable of accommodating hundreds of people for an indefinite period of time. They include not only living quarters and prayer halls, but also workshops, food storage facilities, water supply systems, and even underground gardens with artificial lighting. The technical complexity of these plans is particularly striking. The ventilation system provides for natural draft through a network of vertical shafts disguised as ordinary trees or rocks. Water is supplied through underground sources and a system of cisterns for collecting rainwater. There are even sewage systems and places for burying the dead. But the most mysterious thing is the references to communication with distant brothers through a system of underground tunnels stretching for many miles. Could it be that as early as the 17th century, the old believers were planning to create a unified underground network of settlements covering the entire territory of Russia? Tsarist decrees of those years contain strange references to heretical diggers and prohibitions on the construction of deep cellars without special permission from the authorities. Why did the secular authorities react so sharply to underground construction? What did the Tsarist chambers know about the Old Believers' plans? The first mass persecution of the Old Believers began immediately after the Council of 1666. Thousands of families left their homes and fled to the forests and swamps. Official history claims that most of them died of hunger and disease, but archaeological data suggests otherwise. In places where, according to historical documents, abandoned Old Believer settlements should be located, archaeologists find only traces of temporary camps. Where did entire communities disappear to? Did they really go underground, as people whispered? Modern ground-penetrating radar studies in the Tver and Novgorod regions reveal anomalous underground voids in the very places where, according to legend, Old Believer communities were hiding. Is this a coincidence or confirmation of ancient legends? Archaeological expeditions over the past 20 years have yielded sensational discoveries. In the Arkhangelsk region, in the swamps of the Pinezhsky district, speleologists have discovered artificial caves dating back to the 17th century. These structures are radically different from the well-known monastery underground passages. The entrances to the underground complexes are cleverly camouflaged. They are located under the roots of large fir trees or behind natural rock ledges. Without knowing their exact location, it is almost impossible to find them. The interior layout is impressive in its thoughtfulness. Living quarters, common prayer halls, kitchens with chimneys leading to the surface through the hollow trunks of dead trees. The size of the discovered underground chambers is particularly impressive. One of the complexes in Pinezhsky includes more than 30 rooms on 3 levels. According to researchers' calculations, up to 150 people could live here permanently. The water supply system is organized through underground springs, and ventilation is provided by a complex network of air ducts. Unique icons painted in the Old Believer tradition have been found in the underground churches. Their preservation is remarkable. The constant temperature and humidity of the underground chambers have created ideal conditions for conservation. Some icons date back to the late 17th century, confirming the early development of these shelters. But the most mysterious discovery is the metal plates with incomprehensible symbols found in the underground chambers. Experts have not yet been able to decipher them, but they suggest that this may be a secret writing system developed by the Old Believers to conceal important information. In the Vologda region, local residents still remember legends about underground people. According to these stories, as recently as the mid-20th century, strange people in old-fashioned clothes could be seen in the forests, appearing from underground and then suddenly disappearing. An expedition by the Russian Geographical Society in 2009 recorded several cases of underground structures being discovered in the Kostroma region. Local residents reported sinkholes opening entrances to man-made caves. Unfortunately, most of these findings were filled in by local authorities for safety reasons. Geophysical studies show that underground anomalies are concentrated in certain areas, forming peculiar clusters. This suggests the existence of a unified system for planning underground construction. Could it be that the Old Believers of the 17th century had maps indicating the optimal locations for creating hidden settlements? The underground structures of the Russian North are of particular interest. Here, in conditions of permafrost, the construction of underground shelters required special technologies. The heating systems found by archaeologists demonstrate a deep knowledge of thermal engineering. Underground furnaces are designed so that smoke escapes to the surface through a system of filters, completely concealing any signs of human presence. The remains of foodstuffs with a shelf life of decades have been found in underground storerooms. Grain dried using a special technology, honey in special wax containers, dried meat in birch bark boxes. All these findings indicate that the underground settlements were preparing for a long siege. Radiocarbon analysis of organic remains shows that some of the underground chambers were used for over 100 years. This means that the underground communities of Old Believers existed and developed over many generations. creating a special subculture of people from under the ground. Modern speleologists note that many underground structures were built taking into account the geological features of the area. Their creators were well aware of the location of groundwater, soil characteristics, and the direction of underground currents. Such knowledge could only be passed down from generation to generation of master diggers. But who taught these masters? Were there secret schools of underground construction? And most importantly, how many undiscovered underground cities are still hidden beneath the soil of Russia? The Urals have always been a special place for old believers. Here, among endless forests and rocky mountains, the most grandiose underground settlements in Russian history arose. The Demidovs, industrial magnates and old believers, not only built factories, but also created an entire underground empire for their fellow believers. The Terra 80 expedition of the Sverdlovsk Architectural Institute uncovered some surprising facts. Under Neviansk, Nizhny Tagil, and Yekaterinburg, there is an extensive network of underground communications that has not yet been fully explored. Some tunnels stretch for tens of kilometers, connecting various settlements. The underground complex under the Rastorguev-Kharitonov estate in Yekaterinburg is particularly impressive. Only 2 underground floors are officially recognized, but ground-penetrating radar surveys show the existence of several more levels deeper. There are legends among the people about an underground city capable of sheltering several thousand people. The construction was carried out using unique technologies. Molten lead was used for waterproofing, which made it possible to lay tunnels even under riverbeds. Demidov's craftsmen developed a special mortar composition based on egg white and lime, which became stronger than stone and did not deteriorate for centuries. Traces of a secret mint have been found in the underground chambers of the Neviansk Tower. Gold and silver coins were minted here, indistinguishable from the Tsarist coins, but with secret signs of old believer symbolism. The precious metal content of these coins exceeded official standards, which made them particularly valuable. The security system of the underground cities included ingenious traps and secret mechanisms. In one of the tunnels, archaeologists discovered a lifting iron bridge that could cut off the path of pursuers while simultaneously opening a deep trap well. Such devices required precise engineering calculations and high skill in metalworking. The underground prayer rooms of the Ural Old Believers are striking in their splendor. The halls carved into the rock are decorated with carved iconostases and frescoes. The acoustics of these rooms are designed in such a way that church singing takes on a special, unearthly sound. Local residents claim that on quiet nights, the sounds of ancient chants can still be heard coming from underground. A special role in the creation of the Ural underground was played by craftsmen from among escaped convicts and serfs. Many of them possessed unique knowledge in the field of mining and construction. For their participation in secret work, they received freedom and the patronage of influential old believers. The Demidov archives contain encrypted records of the underground economy. These documents show that not only living quarters and prayer rooms were located underground, but also entire production complexes. Weapons and jewelry were manufactured here, and even banned old believer books were printed. The underground cities were connected by a network of secret couriers and special signals. Camouflaged signal towers were set up on certain hills, which were used to transmit coded messages. The code was based on Old Slavonic numerals and was only understood by those in the know. Underground workshops produced not only essential items, but also works of art of the highest quality. Samples of Old Believer utensils found by archaeologists demonstrate technologies that official science considers inaccessible for that time. The secrets of these technologies were passed on only within closed communities of craftsmen. But the greatest mystery of the Ural underground is its true size. According to estimates by modern researchers, no more than 10% of the existing underground structures have been studied. Most of the entrances are buried or carefully camouflaged. In some cases, access to the underground is still guarded by the descendants of its creators. Legends speak of the existence of a main underground city where the treasures and sacred relics of all the Old Believer communities of the Urals are kept. This city is supposedly connected by tunnels to all other underground settlements and represents the true capital of the hidden world of the Old Believers. Siberia became the last refuge for thousands of Old Believers fleeing persecution. Here, in the endless taiga, underground settlements arose, the scale of which is mind-boggling. Modern research shows that the Siberian underground formed a single network stretching from the Urals to the Far East. In the upper reaches of the Yenisei River, geological expeditions have repeatedly discovered artificial caves estimated to be 3 centuries old. These structures are distinguished by their particularly complex design, adapted to the harsh Siberian climate. Multi-level heating systems allowed them to maintain a comfortable temperature even in the most severe frosts. The old-timers of the village of Tubalov in the Krasnoyarsk territory still remember their grandfathers' stories about the underground elders. According to these legends, in the mid-19th century, people in ancient clothes periodically appeared from the depths of the taiga, bringing valuable furs and unique handicrafts to exchange for necessary goods. Archaeological research in the Podkamenaya Tunguska River Basin has revealed the remains of an underground settlement designed to accommodate more than 500 people. The life support system included underground farms for breeding rabbits and poultry, mushroom plantations, and even primitive greenhouses with artificial lighting from oil lamps. A distinctive feature of Siberian underground dwellings is the use of permafrost as a natural refrigerator. Food supplies for several years were stored in special chambers carved out of the frozen ground. Mammoth meat, periodically found in the taiga, was also preserved for future use after special processing. Manuscripts that were considered irretrievably lost have been preserved in the underground libraries of Siberian skeets. Among them are the complete texts of pre-Nikonian liturgical books, chronicles, and even scientific treatises on astronomy and mathematics. Some manuscripts contain information about geographical discoveries that were decades ahead of official expeditions. The navigation system in the Siberian taiga was based on secret signs carved on trees and stones. These signs, understandable only to Old Believers, indicated directions to underground shelters, water sources, and food stores. Modern tourists sometimes find such signs, but their meaning remains a mystery. Underground structures connected by tunnels to natural caves have been discovered in the Lake Baikal area. This system allowed people to move secretly over long distances, using both artificial and natural cavities. The total length of the explored tunnels exceeds 300 kilometers. The underground workshops of the Siberian Old Believers specialized in the processing of precious metals and stones. Gold was mined in the taiga and melted down into ingots of a special shape with secret markings. These ingots served as currency for trade between various Old Believer communities. The medical knowledge of the underground inhabitants was based on ancient herbal recipes and unique methods of treatment. Rare medicinal plants, many of which were considered extinct, were stored in underground pharmacies. Old Believer healers were renowned for their ability to cure diseases that were considered incurable. Female hermits played a special role in the Siberian underground, devoting their lives to copying sacred texts and raising children. These women possessed remarkable knowledge not only in theology, but also in the natural sciences. Their handwritten works contain observations of natural phenomena that were ahead of official science. Communication between Siberian underground settlements was maintained through a system of messengers who used reindeer sleds and skis. The routes of these messengers passed through inaccessible places known only to the initiated. The delivery time for messages from one end of Siberia to the other was no more than a month. Modern satellite images reveal anomalies in the Siberian taiga that may indicate the existence of unknown underground structures. Many of these places remain inaccessible to researchers due to harsh climatic conditions and remoteness from civilization. The architecture of the Old Believers' underground cities is a unique phenomenon in world construction practice. These structures combine deep engineering knowledge, religious canons, and the requirement for maximum secrecy. Studies of the preserved underground passages show that their creators possessed knowledge that was not recognized by the official science of the time. The basic principle of underground settlement planning was concentric circles around a central temple. This principle reflected the Old Believers' idea of heavenly Jerusalem and, at the same time, provided optimal defense. Each circle could be isolated from the others by means of special dampers and gates. The ventilation system of the underground cities was based on the principle of natural draft. The air ducts were arranged in such a way as to create constant air circulation without the use of mechanical devices. The entrances were disguised as natural formations, tree hollows, crevices in rocks, or animal burrows. Water was supplied through a system of underground wells and cisterns. Particular attention was paid to water quality. It underwent multi-stage purification through layers of sand, coal, and specially prepared stone. In some underground chambers, the remains of water mills driven by underground streams have been found. The underground rooms were lit by a system of mirrors and polished metal plates that directed sunlight from the surface into the deepest halls. For nighttime, specially designed oil lamps were used, which gave off bright light with minimal oil consumption and virtually no smoke. Building materials were selected, taking into account local conditions. In the northern regions, granite blocks were used, held together with a resin and lime-based mortar. In the Urals, local stone with a high iron content was used, which gave the structures particular strength. In Siberia, builders used larch wood treated with special anti-rot compounds. The acoustic properties of underground temples were calculated with surprising accuracy. The shape of the arches and the arrangement of the columns created a multiple echo effect, thanks to which the voice of the reader or singer was amplified and acquired a special sound. Some researchers believe that the underground temples of the Old Believers had better acoustics than many above-ground cathedrals. The heating system included a network of underground channels through which hot air from central furnaces circulated. The furnaces were located in special chambers from which smoke was vented to the surface through a system of complex chimneys that completely concealed any signs of human activity. Defensive structures included not only hidden entrances and traps, but also entire labyrinths of false passages designed to confuse uninvited guests. Stone slabs were installed at critical points, which could be collapsed to block access to living quarters. The sewage system of underground cities was based on principles that were only rediscovered by European science in the 19th century. Waste products were processed in special chambers using bacterial processes, and the purified water was fed into underground reservoirs for fish breeding. Storage rooms were equipped with temperature and humidity control systems. Grain was stored in sealed stone containers filled with inert gas, which prevented spoilage for decades. Meat products were smoked in special chambers with adjustable smoke supply. Workshops were located in separate sections of the underground city, isolated from residential areas. This allowed production activities to be carried out without disturbing the rest of the inhabitants. Forges were equipped with special chimneys that completely absorbed the sounds of work and the smells of metalworking. The layout of the underground cities took into account the possibility of expansion. The main tunnels were laid with extra width, which made it possible to increase capacity and add new branches in the future. Some underground passages were expanded over several generations, turning into veritable labyrinths. Particular attention was paid to the creation of underground gardens and vegetable gardens. A system of mirrors and oil lamps provided artificial lighting sufficient for growing vegetables and medicinal herbs. The soil for underground agriculture was prepared according to special recipes, with the addition of organic fertilizers and minerals. The underground cities of the Old Believers concealed untold riches accumulated over centuries of secret activity. Modern research shows that the financial capabilities of underground communities far exceeded the official economic indicators of the regions where they were located. Where did these funds come from, and where did they disappear to? The underground treasuries contained not only gold and silver, but also rare gemstones. Archaeologists have found traces of diamonds, emeralds, and rubies being processed using technologies that were officially invented much later. This suggests the existence of secret knowledge passed down from generation to generation in Old Believer communities. Unique handwritten books and icons, whose value exceeded that of precious metals, occupied a special place among the underground riches. Some of these works of art were created by the best masters of their time specifically for underground temples. Their artistic and spiritual value was so high that one such icon could buy an entire village. The system of financing underground cities was based on trade operations that were conducted under the guise of ordinary commercial activity. Old Believer merchants had trade connections from Arkhangelsk to Kyakhta, from Astrakhan to Alaska. Part of the profits from these operations went to support the underground communities. Underground workshops produced goods whose quality far exceeded that of official manufactories. Old Believer jewelers, gunsmiths, and artists worked using ancient technologies, the secrets of which were jealously guarded. Their products were in high demand among connoisseurs, which brought considerable income to the underground communities. The fur trade was especially profitable. Old Believer hunters and trappers knew places in the taiga that were inaccessible to ordinary trappers. The quality of the furs obtained in these protected areas was so high that European buyers were willing to pay fabulous sums for them. The Old Believers' underground banks carried out credit operations throughout Russia. These financial institutions operated on principles that modern economic science only recognized as effective in the 20th century. Interest rates were lower than official rates, and guarantees of repayment were higher. The secret treasuries stored not only Russian riches, but also valuables brought from distant countries. Chinese porcelain, Indian spices, Persian carpets, and European watches all testify to the extensive international connections of the underground communities. Scientific instruments and technical devices constituted a special category of riches. The remains of telescopes, astrolabes, mathematical instruments, and even primitive optical devices have been found in the underground chambers. At that time, the cost of these devices was comparable to that of a small estate. The system for protecting underground treasures included not only physical protection, but also complex psychological traps. The entrances to the treasuries were camouflaged in such a way that only those in the know could find them. In addition, false treasures were used to distract potential robbers. The Old Believers' underground mints minted not only imitations of official banknotes, but also their own currency for internal settlements. These coins were made of pure gold and silver, with the addition of rare metals, which made them more valuable than state money. The trade in precious stones was conducted through a system of secret agents in the largest cities of Russia and Europe. Old Believer merchants had access to deposits that were unknown to the official authorities. Some of these deposits were mined using underground methods, which made it possible to conceal the true scale of production. Part of the underground wealth was invested in education and science. Underground schools and libraries were financed from special funds created from the proceeds of trade operations. Not only the children of Old Believers were educated in these educational institutions, but also talented young people from other social classes. Modern attempts to find the underground treasures of the Old Believers face serious obstacles. Many entrances to the underground chambers are walled up or flooded. In addition, there is evidence that the most valuable treasures were moved to other locations long before the revolution of 1917. The communication system between the Old Believers' underground cities was a complex network covering the entire territory of Russia. This system worked so efficiently that news from the most remote corners of the empire reached its recipients faster than official state communications. The system was based on a network of trusted couriers who used special routes laid out along little-known paths through forests, swamps, and mountains. These people had phenomenal navigational skills and could cover enormous distances in the shortest possible time. Signal stations were located on high hills and other strategically important points. They were disguised as ordinary agricultural buildings or natural objects. Using smoke signals during the day and fire signals at night, coded messages were transmitted over distances of up to 100 kilometers. The code for transmitting messages was based on the Old Slavonic numerals and the Church Slavonic alphabet. Each letter had a numerical value, and combinations of letters created complex ciphers that only those in the know could understand. The coding system changed periodically, making it almost impossible to intercept and decrypt messages. Special copyists worked in monastery scriptoria, creating copies of important documents for distribution to various underground centers. These masters possessed the special art of micrography, writing texts in such small handwriting that they could only be read with the aid of magnifying glasses. Old Believer merchants served as living channels of communication, transporting encrypted messages and verbal communications along with their goods. Trade caravans followed established routes, stopping at strictly defined locations where information was exchanged. Female hermits, who lived in small skeets and acted as relays, played a special role in the communication system. They received messages from couriers, deciphered them, and passed them on down the chain. These women had phenomenal memories and could store dozens of encrypted texts in their heads. Waterways were also used to transmit information. Specially trained rowers in light boats traveled along rivers and lakes, delivering messages to the most inaccessible places. They knew all the secret channels and backwaters hidden from prying eyes. In winter, the communication system switched to using ski routes. Ski couriers could cover snow-covered areas at speeds unattainable for ordinary travelers. They knew the locations of secret winter quarters and warehouses where they could rest and replenish their food supplies. Church holidays were used as a cover for secret meetings, where representatives of various communities exchanged information. During large pilgrimages and fairs, leaders of underground cities would meet to coordinate joint actions. The warning system worked with remarkable speed. News of the approach of government troops or searches spread through the network faster than the pursuers themselves could move. This made it possible to take security measures in advance and hide compromising materials. Some underground centers had real intelligence services that gathered information about the political situation in the country, economic processes, and military preparations. This data was analyzed and used to predict future threats. International ties were maintained through Old Believer communities in Poland, Prussia, and other countries. Information about changes in the international situation was regularly sent to underground centers and taken into account when planning long-term policy. A duplication system ensured the reliability of the transmission of particularly important messages. Critically important information was transmitted simultaneously through several channels, which guaranteed its delivery even if individual messages were intercepted. Modern researchers believe that the communication system of the Old Believers' underground cities was one of the most effective in the world at the time. Its principles influenced the development of revolutionary organizations in the 19th century and partisan movements in the 20th century. Among all the legends of the Old Believer world, the tales of the invisible cities of Kitej and Belovodia occupy a special place. According to popular belief, these mythical settlements hid from the eyes of the world and continue to exist in a parallel dimension, where true faith and righteousness are preserved. The legend of Kitejgrad dates back to the 13th century, when the Mongol Tatar troops approached the shores of Lake Svetloyer in the Nizhny Novgorod region. According to legend, the city of Kitej did not surrender to its enemies, but sank beneath the water at the prayers of its inhabitants. Since then, the righteous have been able to hear the ringing of bells coming from the depths of the lake. However, the Old Believer's interpretation of the legend of Kitej has its own peculiarities. According to secret manuscripts found in underground skeets, the city did not sink, but moved to an underground space, where it continues to exist as the spiritual center of true orthodoxy. Only true believers who have preserved the ancient rites can get there. Belovodye is an even more mysterious legend. This mythical land, supposedly located somewhere beyond the Altai Mountains, is described as a place where there is no persecution of the old faith, where rivers flow with white, healing water, and where the ancient wisdom of the ancestors is preserved. Interestingly, the legend of Belovodya had very real consequences. In the 18th and 19th centuries, thousands of Old Believers set out in search of this promised land. Many of these expeditions ended tragically, but some participants returned with stories of encounters with mysterious people who knew the way to the secret country. Modern researchers have discovered that the routes taken in search of Belovodya often coincided with the location of real underground settlements of Old Believers. Perhaps the legend served as a cover for organizing resettlement to already existing secret refuges. Thus, the myth became an instrument of real survival politics. Old Believer manuscripts contain detailed descriptions of the route to Belovodya. These texts contain not only geographical directions, but also secret signs, passwords, and methods of communication with guides. Analysis of these documents shows that behind the mystical symbolism lay quite practical instructions for travelers. Legends about invisible cities served an important psychological function for the persecuted Old Believers. They gave hope for the existence of a place where one could live according to the precepts of their ancestors without fear of persecution. This hope helped people endure the hardships of real life and maintain their faith in the ultimate victory of good. Some researchers believe that the legends of Kitej and Belovodya are based on memories of real settlements that disappeared or became inaccessible for some reason. Archaeological finds in the area of Lake Svetloyer and in the Altai region confirm the existence of ancient settlements there, traces of which mysteriously disappear. Of particular interest are the descriptions of the social structure of invisible cities. According to legends, there is no social inequality there. Everyone lives as one big family, and governance is carried out through a council of elders. These descriptions could have served as a blueprint for an ideal social structure for real underground communities. Secret Old Believer calendars mark special days when the path to invisible cities is supposedly opened. On these days, special prayers and rituals were performed to ensure safe passage to the sacred space. Perhaps these rituals served as a signal for the organization of real transitions to underground shelters. Legends have preserved descriptions of the amazing technologies used in invisible cities. They mention lamps that burn without fire, mechanisms that operate without human effort, and ways of transmitting thoughts over long distances. These descriptions may be distorted memories of the real technical achievements of underground craftsmen. Modern attempts to find entrances to legendary cities continue to this day. Enthusiasts organize expeditions to places mentioned in ancient manuscripts and use modern equipment to search for underground cavities. Some of these searches lead to real discoveries of abandoned underground structures. The influence of legends about invisible cities spread far and wide. Modern archaeological expeditions continue to make sensational discoveries related to the underground settlements of the Old Believers. In 2005, an expedition by the Institute of Archaeology of the Russian Academy of Sciences, led by Professor Alexei Sedov, discovered an underground complex in the Kostroma region dating back to the late 17th century. This complex impressed researchers with its scale and technical perfection. Ground-penetrating radar scanning revealed a three-level system of rooms with a total area of more than 2,000 square meters. The upper level housed living quarters and workshops. The middle level was occupied by a temple and a library, and the lower level was used for food storage and technical needs. Particular attention was drawn to the icon of the Virgin Odigitria, found in the underground temple and painted in the tradition of pre-Niconian art. Radiocarbon analysis of the paints showed that the icon was created between 1675 and 1690. The artistic style of the icon indicates the work of a master of the highest class. The remains of a smithy, a jewelry workshop, and a book-binding workshop were discovered in the underground workshops. The tools found demonstrate the high level of technology of that time. Of particular interest is the discovery of lenses for eyeglasses, made using a technology that was known only in Venice at that time. The 2010 expedition to the Vologda region, led by Doctor of Historical Sciences Elizaveta Komarova, yielded equally sensational results. In the Sukona River area, the remains of an underground scriptorium were found, where manuscripts were copied and decorated. The condition of the manuscripts found was remarkable. The constant temperature and humidity of the underground chambers created ideal conditions for the preservation of parchment and ink. Among the finds were the complete text of the Stoglav, a pre-Niconian service book, and several previously unknown Old Believer polemical writings. Of particular interest is a manuscript found entitled The Tale of Underground Cities. This text contains detailed descriptions of the structure of underground settlements and the rules of life in them. The text suggests that there was a unified system of organization of underground cities with common principles of planning and management. An expedition in 2015 in the Perm region discovered underground structures that were used as secret schools for teaching Old Believer children. These schools taught not only religious subjects, but also mathematics, astronomy, and natural sciences. The educational materials found show that the level of education in underground schools was significantly higher than in official educational institutions of that time. Among the finds are handwritten textbooks on arithmetic, geometry, and even elementary physics. Some texts contain information that was decades ahead of official science. In 2018, an expedition by the Siberian branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences made a unique discovery in the Yeniseisk area. Under the ruins of an old chapel, an entrance was found to a vast underground chamber that was used as a secret printing house for Old Believer books. The remains of printing equipment found date back to the early 18th century. This means that the Old Believers mastered book printing much earlier than previously thought. The quality of the printed samples found is on par with the best European samples of that time. A particularly valuable find was a printing case with letters in Church Slavonic script. Analysis of the metal showed that the letters were made of an alloy whose composition has not yet been precisely determined. This alloy had unique properties. It did not oxidize and produced exceptionally clear prints. Modern technologies allow us to make discoveries that were impossible for researchers in the past. LiDAR scanning from helicopters reveals underground anomalies in the most inaccessible areas of Siberia and the Far East. Many of these anomalies are man-made and may indicate the existence of unknown underground structures. Geophysical studies in the Solovetsky Islands area have revealed the presence of extensive underground cavities beneath the monastery grounds. These cavities are significantly larger than the known monastery cellars and could have served as a refuge for hundreds of people in case of siege. Underwater archaeology of Lake Svetloyer has yielded unexpected results. The remains of wooden structures were found at the bottom of the lake, which cannot be explained by natural causes. Dendrochronological analysis showed that the wood was 700 to 800 years old, which coincides with the dating of the legend of Kitezhgrad. Each new discovery raises more questions than it answers. The scale of the Old Believers' underground structures is much larger than previously thought. It seems that an entire civilization existed underground, with its own economy, culture, and technologies. Contemporary eyewitness accounts of encounters with inhabitants of underground cities continue to emerge to this day. These stories, often contradictory and mysterious, nevertheless paint a consistent picture of the existence of hidden communities that still live according to ancient traditions. In 1987, geologist Vladimir Petrov, who was working on an expedition to search for minerals in the Arkhangelsk region, reported a strange encounter in the forests near the village of Pinega. According to him, a group of people in ancient clothing appeared from underground and offered to exchange gold nuggets for modern medicines and batteries. Petrov describes these people as pale but healthy, with a special gleam in their eyes. They spoke in archaic Russian with Church Slavonic expressions. When the geologist tried to find out where they came from, the elder of the group pointed to the ground and said, "From the invisible city, where true faith is kept." A similar case was recorded in 1993 in the Perm region. Forester Ivan Morozov said that he met a family of 5 in the taiga who lived in a well-equipped cave. They had a library of ancient books, icons by ancient masters, and food supplies for several years. The family told the forester that their ancestors had gone underground during the reign of Tsar Alexei Mikhailovich and had been living in hidden settlements ever since. According to them, there are many such settlements in the taiga, and they are all connected by a system of tunnels. The inhabitants of the underground world periodically come to the surface to exchange necessary goods. In 2005, an incident occurred in the Krasnoyarsk region that received widespread coverage in the local media. A group of tourists got lost in the taiga during a severe blizzard. When their strength was running out, people in monastic robes appeared and led them to an underground shelter. The tourists spent 3 days in the underground, waiting for the bad weather to end. They describe a large hall with an iconostasis, a refectory, and cells for living. They were served simple but very tasty food and water from an underground source. The monks explained that their community had existed there for 300 years. When the tourists tried to take pictures of the underground temple, the senior monk forbade them to do so, explaining that the world is not ready to see the sacred. Upon leaving the underground, the tourists were asked to promise not to tell anyone the exact location of the shelter. All members of the group made this promise and still keep it. Particularly interesting are the testimonies of children who, according to their parents, met underground grandfathers and grandmothers in the forest. The children say that these people know all the herbs and animals, can cure any disease, and tell amazing stories about ancient times. In 2012, an incident occurred in the Vologda region that prompted local authorities to conduct an official investigation. An 8-year-old boy got lost in the forest and was found a week later in excellent condition. He said that underground people had found him and taken care of him in a large cave. The boy described an underground city with streets, houses, and even a square where the inhabitants gathered. According to him, entire families with children lived there and never came to the surface. The children learned to read from old books and knew many ancient songs and prayers. A psychological examination of the boy revealed no signs of fantasy or suggestion. His story was consistent and detailed. Experts were particularly struck by the fact that the child knew several Church Slavonic words that he could not have learned in everyday life. Modern adventurers organize special expeditions to places where encounters with underground people have been reported. Some of these expeditions do indeed find traces of human presence in the most unexpected places. Extinguished fires, traces of woodworking, paths leading nowhere. Internet forums are full of posts from people who claim to have encountered members of underground communities. Many of these posts can be dismissed as fantasies or hoaxes, but some contain details that would be difficult to invent without a deep knowledge of Old Believer culture. The testimonies of hunters and fishermen who spend a lot of time in the forest and know the local nature well seem particularly credible. They often talk about encounters with people who know the forest better than the animals and appear as if from under the ground. Some researchers believe that eyewitness accounts can be explained by encounters with ordinary hermits or sectarians. However, the number and consistency of these accounts suggest that there is more to them than just random encounters with individuals. Attempts to organize a systematic search for underground communities encounter serious difficulties. Witnesses are often unable or unwilling to indicate the exact location of the encounters. In addition, the underground people are extremely cautious and avoid contact with representatives of official structures. State archives hold many classified documents relating to underground Old Believer settlements. These materials, many of which are still marked secret, indicate that the authorities have always known about the existence of underground cities, but have preferred not to interfere in their activities. The archives of the Cheka OGPU contain reports from agents about an underground network of anti-Soviet elements dating back to the 1920s. These documents contain detailed descriptions of underground structures in various regions of the USSR and plans for their elimination. However, most of these plans were never implemented. Of particular interest is a report by the head of the Arkhangelsk GPU from 1927, which reports the discovery of an underground city for 500 people in the Taiga River area. The document notes that the city has a perfect defense system and a developed network of tunnels for the evacuation of the population. The attempt to storm this underground city ended in failure. According to a secret report, the enemy used tactical techniques unknown to us, including a system of traps and flooding some of the tunnels. The GPU suffered 18 casualties and 32 wounded. After this unsuccessful assault, a decision was made to blockade and wait. The underground exits were placed under surveillance, but no further active measures were taken. Subsequent documents mention that the inhabitants of the underground city ceased hostile activities and do not pose a threat to Soviet power. The KGB archives contain even more intriguing materials. In 1958, a special group called Object 7 was created to study anomalous underground formations in the RSFSR. Colonel Alexei Sokolov, who had experience working on classified scientific projects, was appointed head of the group. The Object 7 group carried out systematic mapping of the Old Believers' underground structures. It had at its disposal the most modern equipment of the time, including the first models of ground-penetrating radar and seismic equipment. The results of the group's work are still classified. Declassified fragments of documents indicate that the group discovered a unified system of underground communications stretching from the Urals to the Far East. One of the reports notes that the technical perfection of the discovered structures exceeds the capabilities of modern engineering science. The KGB was particularly interested in information about the Old Believers' underground laboratories. A secret report from 1962 mentions the discovery of an underground room with unknown technical devices and a library of scientific treatises in various languages. The authorities tried to establish contact with the leaders of the underground communities through official representatives of the Old Believer churches. These attempts were unsuccessful. The official Old Believers claimed that they had no connection with the underground communities and considered stories about them to be superstitions and fantasies. In 1973, an interdepartmental committee was created to study historic underground structures. Officially, the committee was concerned with the preservation of architectural monuments, but in reality, its goal was to establish control over the underground cities of the Old Believers. The committee's activities were shrouded in the strictest secrecy. Its employees had special identification cards and were exempt from reporting to local party authorities. Funding came from closed budget items, and the results of the work were reported personally to the Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. From information leaked to the press, it is known that the committee attempted to organize a civilized dialogue with the underground communities. To this end, historians and ethnographers were used to establish trusting relationships with the bearers of ancient traditions. These attempts also failed to produce the desired results. The underground communities avoided contact with any representatives of state power, considering them servants of the Antichrist. Even offers of material assistance and official recognition were categorically rejected. After the collapse of the USSR, many archives were declassified, but documents relating to the underground settlements of the Old Believers remain closed to this day. The official justification is the protection of state interests and the safety of citizens. What lies behind this wording remains a mystery. Modern researchers suggest that the secrecy of the documents is related to the fact that underground communities still exist and maintain ties with influential circles in Russian society. Perhaps among today's oligarchs and officials, there are descendants of the underground people who protect the interests of their ancestors. Another version is that the underground cities store materials of state or historical value. These could be ancient manuscripts, works of art, or even scientific developments that the government does not want to make public. Attempts by journalists and social activists to gain access to classified archives are met with fierce resistance from the special services. All requests are rejected with the statement that the information cannot be disclosed in the interests of national security. The technologies used to conceal the underground settlements of the Old Believers are striking in their sophistication and effectiveness. These methods, developed centuries ago, still allow entire cities to be hidden from even the most modern detection methods. The secrets of these technologies have been passed down from generation to generation and jealously guarded from outsiders. The main principle of camouflage was to use the natural features of the landscape. The entrances to the underground passages were located in places where their presence looked natural, under the roots of large trees, in crevices in rocks, behind waterfalls, or at the mouths of streams. Artificial structures imitated natural formations so accurately that they could fool even experienced trackers. Clever techniques were used to create false trails. Paths to the real entrances were disguised as animal trails, and false trails were laid to empty caves or dead-end gorges. The system of false entrances was so complex that without knowledge of special landmarks, it was almost impossible to find the right path. Ventilation shafts, the most vulnerable element of any underground structure, were camouflaged with particular care. They were located inside hollow trunks of dead trees, under piles of stones, or in thickets of bushes. The outgoing air was specially cooled or heated to ambient temperature to avoid detection by thermal imaging cameras. Chimneys from underground furnaces posed a particular problem. Old Believer engineers solved it by creating a system of multiple smoke filtration through layers of coal, sand, and special minerals. The smoke came to the surface virtually colorless and odorless, dispersing through many small holes over a large area. Acoustic camouflage was achieved through the use of sound-absorbing materials and special room layouts. The sounds of human activity were drowned out by the noise of underground streams, and when necessary, imitators of natural sounds were used. Bird song, the rustling of leaves, the murmur of water. The system for warning of the approach of strangers was based on a network of observation posts disguised as hunting blinds or shepherds' camps. Observers used a system of signals imitating the sounds of nature. Bird song, the howling of wolves, the creaking of trees in the wind. Complex systems of false trails were used to deceive pursuers. Specially trained people left tracks leading in the opposite direction from the underground, imitated the camps of fugitives, and even created false graves. These measures required a great deal of time and human resources, but provided reliable protection. Particular attention was paid to concealing signs of economic activity. The waste products of the underground inhabitants were processed in special chambers or taken far away from the settlements. Traces of metal and wood processing were carefully hidden, and slag from forges was used to reinforce roads in remote areas. The water supply was organized in such a way as not to disturb the natural regime of surface water bodies. Underground wells were connected to deep aquifers without affecting the groundwater level in the surrounding area. Used water was discharged into underground rivers or deep absorption wells. The camouflage system also included measures to conceal electromagnetic radiation. Although such radiation was minimal at the time, the Old Believers intuitively understood the need to shield metal objects. For this purpose, special alloys and coatings were used, the recipes for which were kept strictly secret. Biological camouflage involved creating vegetation above the underground structures that was indistinguishable from the surrounding landscape. To this end, local species of trees and shrubs were used, which were planted in accordance with the natural growth patterns of plants in the area. Psychological camouflage methods included spreading false information about the location of the underground facilities. Legends about cursed places inhabited by evil spirits or areas with an increased risk of wild animal attacks were deliberately perpetuated among the population. These rumors effectively deterred casual travelers. Modern attempts to detect camouflaged underground passages using satellite imagery and thermal imaging equipment are often ineffective. The camouflage techniques developed by the Old Believers take into account principles that modern science has only recently discovered. Some researchers believe that methods of concealing underground settlements may be of interest to modern military and special services. However, it is extremely difficult to gain access to this knowledge, as the bearers of these traditions are not inclined to share their secrets with representatives of official structures. The effectiveness of concealment technologies is confirmed by the fact that many underground settlements, whose existence is known from historical record sources, have not yet been discovered by archaeologists. This means that the camouflage system continues to function centuries after its creation. The connection between the underground cities of the Old Believers and the world's underground civilizations is one of the most intriguing mysteries in history. There is evidence that Russian underground settlements were part of a global network of hidden communities spanning different continents and cultures. An analysis of the architectural solutions found in Russian underground passages reveals striking parallels with the underground cities of Cappadocia in Turkey. The principles of ventilation, water supply, and room layout are in many cases identical, which cannot be explained by mere coincidence or independent invention. Manuscripts in Greek, Arabic, and Latin have been found in the underground libraries of the Old Believers, containing descriptions of underground structures in various countries around the world. Of particular interest is a treatise entitled On the Underground Cities of the World, dated to the 14th century, which contains detailed maps of underground cities from Iceland to India. The Old Believers' trade connections extended far beyond Russia. Old Believer merchants had business relationships with underground communities in Poland, Germany, and even North America. There is documentary evidence of regular deliveries of specific materials and technologies between various underground centers. The archives of the Solovetsky Monastery contain a letter from a 17th-century abbot mentioning brothers from distant underground countries who sent drawings of new machines for purifying the air. These technologies were implemented in the Solovetsky underground and significantly improved the living conditions of its inhabitants. Particularly close ties existed between Russian underground cities and similar settlements in Central Europe. During the religious wars of the 16th and 17th centuries, many Protestant communities were also forced to go underground, creating an extensive network of hidden settlements. Information was exchanged between underground civilizations through a system of wandering monks and merchants who could cross borders unhindered under the guise of pilgrims or traders. These people possessed special codes and signs that allowed them to recognize each other and receive help in any country. In the underground workshops of Russian Old Believers, items were found that were made using technologies used by underground craftsmen in various parts of the world. These include special types of weapons, jewelry with specific symbols, and tools that have no analogs in above-ground production. The navigation system used by underground travelers was based on knowledge of magnetic anomalies and underground water flows. There were secret maps marking safe routes between various underground cities, including passages across state borders. Linguistic features found in underground manuscripts indicate the existence of a special underground coin, a common language used for international communication between hidden communities. This language was based on Latin but included elements of Greek, Slavic, and Germanic languages. The religious practices of underground communities also had common elements, despite differences in their original denominations. A syncretic cult was created, combining Christian, Islamic, and even pagan elements. The central idea of this cult was the perception of the Earth's surface as the kingdom of darkness and the underground world as the true light. Scientific knowledge was actively exchanged between underground centers. Astronomical instruments of Arab manufacture, mathematical treatises by Byzantine scholars, and alchemical recipes by Western European masters have been found in Russian underground chambers. This testifies to the existence of an international network of underground scientists and inventors. Military technology was also exchanged between underground civilizations. Weapons found in Russian underground passages demonstrate the influence of various military traditions, from Byzantine engineering to Arab metallurgy and Western European artillery. Modern DNA studies of remains found in underground settlements show the surprising genetic diversity of their inhabitants. Among them were representatives of various European, Asian, and even African populations. This confirms the hypothesis about the international nature of underground communities. Some researchers suggest that underground civilizations may have had colonies in the New World long before the official discovery of America. Archaeological finds in North and South America include underground structures built using technologies identical to European and Asian models. Modern attempts to reconstruct a map of the global network of underground cities face serious obstacles. Many documents have been destroyed, and the bearers of traditions are reluctant to share information. Nevertheless, the accumulating data suggest that this network was much more extensive and organized than previously thought. The influence of underground civilizations on the development of humanity may have been much more significant than is commonly thought. Many scientific discoveries and technical inventions may have been made in underground laboratories and only later penetrated the above-ground world. Despite the passing of centuries, underground communities of Old Believers continue to exist today. Modern evidence indicates that these communities have not only survived, but have also adapted to the conditions of the 21st century, using the latest technologies to maintain their secrecy. In 2018, a group of speleologists from Novosibirsk accidentally discovered an underground settlement in the Altai Mountains, whose inhabitants used solar panels for lighting and modern water purification systems. At the same time, the community preserved all traditional Old Believer customs and refused to have any contact with the outside world. Modern underground communities range in size from a few dozen to several hundred people. They lead a virtually autonomous existence, growing food in underground greenhouses with artificial lighting and raising livestock in specially equipped facilities. Hydroponic technology allows them to produce high yields of vegetables all year round. The education system in modern underground communities combines traditional Old Believer subjects with the study of modern sciences. Children study Church Slavonic and ancient texts, but at the same time acquire knowledge in physics, chemistry, biology, and computer science. Many communities have access to the internet via satellite communication channels. Medical care in underground settlements is based on a combination of traditional folk medicine and modern scientific advances. The communities have well-equipped medical centers with modern equipment, and doctors are trained in both traditional and modern medical institutions. The economic activity of modern underground communities includes the production of high-tech products, which are sold through a network of trusted agents on the surface. Many communities specialize in software development, precision instrument manufacturing, and the production of environmentally friendly food products. Communication between different underground communities is maintained through secure internet channels and a courier system using modern means of transport. A coordination center, presumably located somewhere in the Urals, facilitates the exchange of information and resources between all participants in the network. New members are recruited very selectively. Candidates undergo a lengthy period of screening and training before being admitted to the underground settlements. Preference is given to people with technical education who can contribute to the development of the community. Modern underground cities are equipped with air conditioning, water purification, and waste treatment systems that are on par with the best urban standards. Energy is supplied from renewable sources: solar panels, wind turbines, and geothermal plants. The security system includes modern electronic surveillance and protection devices. Entrances to underground cities are controlled by biometric scanners, and the area around the settlements is patrolled by unmanned aerial vehicles. The cultural life of modern underground communities combines the preservation of ancient traditions with elements of modern culture. Classical and folk music concerts are held, art exhibitions, and literary evenings are organized. Many communities have their own theaters and museums. Scientific research is conducted in a wide range of areas, from the study of underground ecology to the development of new construction and life support technologies. The results of this research are sometimes passed on to scientific institutions on the surface through a system of anonymous publications. Relations with the outside world are strictly regulated. Community members may periodically go to the surface to obtain education, work, or resolve personal issues, but they are required to maintain strict secrecy regarding the location and structure of underground settlements. The demographic situation in underground communities is a subject of particular concern to the leadership. Marriage and childbirth are encouraged, and special conditions are created for young families. The average life expectancy in underground settlements exceeds the Russian average thanks to a healthy lifestyle and high-quality medicine. Plans for the development of modern underground communities include the expansion of existing settlements and the creation of new centers in ecologically clean areas. Particular attention is paid to the development of closed ecosystems that could function completely autonomously in the event of global disasters. Some experts believe that modern underground communities of Old Believers can serve as a model for creating settlements of the future that are capable of surviving environmental crises and social upheavals. Their experience of autonomous existence is of considerable interest to futurologists and urbanists. The influence of underground communities on the development of modern society may be more significant than it seems at first glance. Many technological solutions and social practices developed in underground settlements are gradually penetrating public life through a network of sympathizers and supporters. The secrets of the Old Believers' underground cities remain one of the most fascinating mysteries of our time. Despite centuries of research and numerous archaeological discoveries, most questions about the scale, structure, and current state of this hidden civilization remain unanswered. Modern technology has made it possible to discover more than 300 anomalous objects underground in European Russia, which may turn out to be man-made structures. However, access to most of them is limited either by natural obstacles or by the actions of unknown forces that hinder research. Particularly intriguing are reports of underground structures in the Moscow and St. Petersburg areas. Builders of subways and utility tunnels have repeatedly reported encounters with unknown underground structures that clearly do not belong to modern communications. In 2019, during the construction of a shopping center in Moscow, workers stumbled upon a walled-up tunnel leading in an unknown direction. Attempts to investigate it were stopped by order of the city authorities, and information about the discovery was classified. Similar cases occur regularly in various cities across Russia. There is a hypothesis that the underground network of the Old Believers includes connections to natural cave systems, the total length of which may be estimated at tens of thousands of kilometers. If this hypothesis is correct, then there is an entire underground continent under the territory of Russia with its own geography, climate, and ecosystems. Modern satellite images reveal unexplained anomalies in remote areas of Siberia and the Far East. These anomalies manifest themselves in the form of regular geometric shapes on the Earth's surface, changes in vegetation, and thermal anomalies that may indicate underground activity. Particularly mysterious are reports of glowing underground passages in the Lake Baikal area. Local residents regularly observe a faint glow emanating from underground at certain points along the coast. Scientific expeditions have so far been unable to find an explanation for this phenomenon. There are closed forums on the internet where participants discuss issues related to underground settlements. Analysis of these discussions shows that among the participants, there are people who have specific information about modern underground communities and even maintain contact with them. Some researchers suggest that underground Old Believer communities may play an important role in modern Russian economics and politics. Their financial resources, accumulated over centuries, may be used to influence important decisions at the state level. There is evidence that representatives of underground communities periodically appear at various international conferences and symposiums, presenting themselves as private researchers or representatives of little-known organizations. Their reports often contain unique information, the source of which remains a mystery. The technological achievements of underground communities may be significantly ahead of the generally accepted level of scientific and technological development. Patent databases contain many inventions whose authors provide fictitious addresses or disappear without a trace shortly after registering their patents. Contemporary environmental problems force us to take a fresh look at the experience of underground communities. Their technologies of closed life cycles, renewable energy, and sustainable development may be the key to solving humanity's global problems. In the context of the growing instability of the modern world, underground cities can be seen as refuges for the preservation of human civilization. Their experience in creating autonomous communities capable of existing independently of external conditions is becoming particularly relevant. The religious aspect of underground communities' activities also remains a mystery. Perhaps over the centuries, their beliefs have evolved into a special form of spirituality that combines ancient traditions with a modern understanding of the world and humanity's place in it. The future of the relationship between underground communities and the above-ground world remains uncertain. Growing public attention to this topic may force hidden communities to change their policy of secrecy, or, conversely, go even deeper underground. Today's children, who have grown up in the age of the internet and social media, may be less inclined to preserve traditions of secrecy. This poses a threat to the existence of underground communities, but at the same time opens up opportunities for dialogue between the two worlds. Recent world events, pandemics, environmental disasters, international conflicts, may force humanity to rethink its attitude toward alternative forms of social organization. The experience of the Old Believers' underground communities may be in demand as never before. The mystery of underground cities remains unsolved, but every day brings new evidence of their existence. Perhaps in the near future, humanity will be forced to acknowledge the existence of a parallel civilization that has developed alongside ours for centuries, remaining invisible and unknown.